I've taught piano for 25 years, and not once have I ever taught hand position. I've never manipulated a child's or an adult's hand into a shape, and I've certainly never told them to hold their hand in any kind of position as if there's a tennis ball or an apple or an orange or a mouse underneath it. On a recent post in a public piano teachers forum about whether we should or shouldn't correct a student's hand if they adopt particular positions, it was astonishing to me that only 3 or 4 comments out of over 100 actually cast any doubt on whether we should be teaching these hand positions or not. The thread in question was actually more specific. It was to do with the so-called collapsing of the DIP joint, the final joint in the finger, and whether that causes problems that need to be corrected. When I suggested that the original poster consult either a doctor or a physio, or at least a human biologist, I received no response. I was pretty disturbed to see just how many were advocating teaching the child to hold their hand in a claw or like talons, with no supporting evidence offered. As for that particular issue of collapsing that final joint and whether it's a problem, I actually found myself reaching out to some of the few people, scientists, who are actually doing research into piano pedagogy specifically. And I thought maybe one of them might have come across some research on this. If you have, please drop a link or a comment below. But between us, we couldn't actually find any scientific research on this, specifically in relation to piano playing. But I can think of a number of very famous top drawer pianists, just off the top of my head, who seem to exhibit this particular peculiarity. And their techniques are unquestionable. So the question is it hurting them in some way? Is it detrimental? Or is it just something that happens with some people? So going back to this business of hand position in general, if you watch 1,000 videos of top performers playing all kinds of repertoire in different genres, performers of different ages, different backgrounds, different cultures, you'll see that their hands are infinitely malleable. They're adaptive to the moment. They don't assume a fixed position in any way, shape or form. You'll see that they're constantly adapting, constantly maneuvering on the keyboard. In contrast, I watched through a whole 10-minute YouTube video the other day in which, notably, the speaker didn't play a note on the piano, but showed a lot of pictures of bridges and was comparing the bridge of the hand, meaning the kind of support offered by the knuckles, to all kinds of bridges. And I quite like to use AI to try to get to the bottom of where this information is coming from. For example, I was reminded of the Neuhaus arch or the Neuhaus Bridge, which was a concept of Heinrich Neuhaus, who wrote a very famous book on piano pedagogy, which I did read years ago as a student. I can't say there was much that helped me at the time when I was struggling with recurring repetitive strain injury, stage fright, and all manner of technical difficulties. But maybe I didn't read it carefully enough, because I have to admit I didn't remember this. I find that in a lot of these videos exploring these concepts, the hand is likened to all sorts of things that seem on the face of it to bear very little resemblance to the hand. Neuhaus references a bridge that's attached at one end, i.e. the shoulder, and then the other end, i.e. the hand. But in no piano playing is the hand actually attached or literally supporting the weight for more than a fleeting moment as we press down a key. So delving a bit deeper, the AI response went into biomechanical efficiency and load-bearing physics. But reading through all the blurbs, only one thing stood out as being pretty much unquestionable, which is that if these knuckles were to sink below the level of the key, then they can't provide any structural support from the force generated in the rest of the body. But have you ever seen these knuckles sink below the surface of the key when we're playing? And I looked up source after source, and all of them were popular pedagogical YouTube and Instagram channels. And at no point have I seen any evidence that any of these people advocating these particular hand positions have any scientific background at all. I found some worrying trends when I leafed through dozens of books at the recent UK Music and Drama Education Expo, at which I was a speaker. This is one of the biggest music and drama education conferences in Europe, showcasing the latest resources and apps and books. And yet every recently published book on technique, often award-winning materials, to me seemed far more like a reframing of old ideas than anything that could be construed to draw on modern science. For example, one award-winning series on technique, within a very short time span, started saying things like, find your C major position, or place your hand on the piano in a C major position. Now this is a very old-fashioned, controversial idea. And I think these kinds of things are where the confusion lies when it comes to hand position. If you get a child or even an adult to place their hands in a position with their thumb on C, you immediately run into problems because nobody actually plays the piano like this. Nobody fixes their hand over notes and tries to push them down from the key surface with their fingers, or even assisted by the arm, because you can only actually do that, I mean, I was going to say easily, but you can't even do it easily, but it only becomes an option when you're playing music that spans 5 notes. And the point is, it's incredibly difficult to control dynamic shaping or rhythmic evenness or phrasing or any other aspect of technique whilst you're in this position. And I think that's why teachers get so stuck at this idea of hand position, because it's almost as if they're desperately trying to find a way to facilitate this aspect of playing. But when I teach, I just avoid that position for a long time, as my American teacher, Sophia Rosoff, and her teacher before her, Abby Whiteside, made absolutely clear. Scalic positions, scalic movements, scalic figurations are some of the most complex, nuanced, and intricate patterns to master on the piano. So why start with them if you're a beginner? At my seminar at the aforementioned expo, one of the slides displayed a whole list of activities that children learn by themselves. You know, you wouldn't think of trying to correct a child's foot position when they're learning to walk. And as Abby Whiteside and others have said, the hands are the periphery of the playing mechanism. They're the very final aspect that I would argue deserves the least attention in terms of attention to minutiae. So all of my work focuses on cultivating those aspects that are at the centre of the playing coordination first. And that very much includes, right from the outset, how our bodies respond to music that we want to play emotionally or personally, authentically. And it absolutely involves training the ears as our control centre for technique. So essentially this video is a plea. If you're a teacher and you're teaching a hand position or any kind of fixed position, please ask yourself whether this is something that you need to teach. And I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't. I am saying please check your sources for this belief and ask yourself, am I doing this just because my teacher did this and their teacher before them? Or is there evidence that this is really helping my students? And I would also ask, is this the right material to be starting with? Is this the most ergonomic and flowing and engaging starting point for my child or adult students? You know, there's a logical fallacy, ad populum, otherwise known as the bandwagon effect, which spotlights how easy it is to do things just because a lot of people believe them to be true. And if you're a beginner to elementary pianist and you're struggling with things like finger dexterity and control over everything from rhythmic evenness to dynamic nuance and phrasing, maybe ask yourself, is trying to keep any kind of fixed hand position helping or hindering in these respects? And certainly if you're a late elementary to intermediate player and you're still struggling with all manner of techniques in your repertoire, then I would revisit what you've been told about hand position and consider your sources. Where did this information come from? If it came from a person or from people, what is their experience? What is their motivation? And I always like to say this in memory of my American teacher's teacher, Abby Whiteside. What is their level of humility? In other words, are they the sort of person who continues to revise their opinions when new information comes to light? So if you're enjoying these deep dives into issues surrounding piano playing, please hit like and subscribe. And if you're interested in reading more about an approach to piano technique that does not prioritize putting your hand or keeping your hand in any kind of position, then please check out pianoportals.com.